Welcome. To get the best image quality out of the Xperia 1 Mark II, we have to use these two apps, Photo Pro and Cinema Pro. Now, I've already done a few videos about Photo Pro, which I'll link above, and yes, the astrophotography tutorial is also coming. We've had a lot of cloudy skies, so waiting for it to clear up a bit. But in this video, we're going to cover Cinema Pro. So some of you might be familiar with the popular app called Filmic Pro, and Cinema Pro is very similar in that it gives you manual control over your video. The main difference is that this app's built in by Sony versus Filmic Pro you have to buy. And also, on the note of Filmic Pro, I have some bad news that I'm going to share near the end of the video. Alright, let's dive into the app. So in the middle we have the video preview, which is kind of obvious. At the bottom we have a bunch of display settings, the audio level, the duration of the video, HDR, the codec, battery level remaining, as well as memory remaining. Now you'll also want to turn on the display by hitting this button down here. And you can see now we have this crosshair in the middle that shows you what we're focusing on here. Now there are a bunch more settings that we can enable by going up to this menu at the top right, which is this triple line menu. And then in here we can see we have a bunch of settings. We want to turn on stabilizer to make the footage more stable. We want to turn on this manual meter, which gives us this exposure meter in the bottom left, which is very useful when trying to shoot with this app. We'll also want to turn on grid lines. I like to use this to get the subject in different areas of the frame. And then also I like this level down here, which I turn on, which gives us this level at the bottom to make sure our shot is level. So if we go sideways, you'll see it's not level. If I come in the middle, it'll turn green, which means that this is a level shot. And while we're here, we'll also want to turn on this intelligent wind filter, which takes us into settings. And this is useful if you're shooting outside to cut out the wind noise. Right, now let's go through the process of actually taking a shot. So the first thing we want to do is create a new project, which we come up to the menu at the top right, go to open project. I can just hit new project here. It'll give me a name that I can change, but we'll leave it to the default, which is the current date, and say OK, and now it's going to open this up. And once we're in here, we can change the resolution and the frames per second. So right now it's 4K, I can go to 2K if I want to, and then the frames per second, I'm at 29.97, but I can go to 25, 24 or 60. I'll leave it at 30 frames per second. So next we want to look at the settings down here. And the first thing you want to look at is the lens that you want to use. Now in 4K 30 here, I can use any three of these lenses, so I can go up to 70 here for instance, and get a really close-up shot of these elephants. Or I can go back to 24 and get that wider shot, or even go to 16 if I want to. I can tap to confirm that. So a cool feature of this app are all the looks that we get here, which let us pick different picture profiles for the video. And the most popular one, I think, by far is Venice CS, which gives us that cinema camera feel. And you can see it kind of gives us that cinematic color look. I personally prefer just using NA because I think it gives us the most realistic colors, and I like to tweak them after I take the video. But a lot of these options here are really fun to use. It's also worth noting that when you use one of these picture profiles, it seems to darken the image a little bit. So you're going to have to adjust how you're shooting the image to correct for that. Right, now that we have this set up, let's take a look at how to actually compose a shot. So similar to Photo Pro, the two main ways we're going to control the brightness of this image is by using ISO and shutter angle. And shutter angle is another way to describe shutter speed. And in most cases, you're going to want to try to set this to 180, which will give you 2 times the frames per second you're going for. So in this case, since I'm doing 30 frames per second, this is 1/60. And in some cases, you may need to change it to be slower or faster depending on how much light is available. Since we're trying to keep the shutter angle at 180, the only thing that we can really change is the ISO. And in this case, if I go lower, it's going to get darker, the image here. If I go higher, it's going to become brighter. But as we discussed before, the higher I go, the more likely there is to be noise in this image. So you want to try to keep it as low as possible to get the best quality. And you can see in this case, as I'm going lower here, as the image gets darker, you'll see that the scale here is going into the negative territory, right? It's almost -1. And so your goal is to get this as close to 0 as possible to get a balanced exposure, to get the brightness to look balanced in the image. Now, one thing I want to point out is that this scale is based on what's in the center of the frame. So you can see I'm pointed at the elephant here, which is a little dark, so it's kind of less than 0 here. But if I point this at the backdrop here, you see it becomes 0. because the backdrop is brighter. So it's important to keep whatever you're trying to get appropriately exposed in the center of the frame to get that appropriate brightness. So it's the elephant here, which is a little low, so I can come in here and go to maybe 200, and now it's perfect. And we're good to record. All we have to do is hit the record button at the bottom or hit the shutter button at the top, and the video is started. You can see the timer going at the bottom. You can see the audio levels, which look great, and you can see whatever's in the center of the frame is in focus. So if I point this back, you can see that elephant becomes the focus. If I go even back to the backdrop, you see that becomes focus. If I want to focus on something else, I can just tap, and then that takes focus. Or I can tap back here, and the elephant takes focus. So tap to focus works really well. If I wanted to go back to the center, I just tap on the square again, and now this is working again. Whatever's in the center is now in focus. Then I hit the record button again to stop. And then we have our clip at the bottom here. I can tap this, and it'll play it back for us. Looks pretty good. So now let's take a moment to cover some advanced settings. The first one I want to talk about is white balance. Now I had this set to auto, which means that the white balance was being automatically determined. But in a lot of cases when you're taking multiple clips of video, you don't want your white balance to change because what looks white can change based on the shot. Now what's cool here is that I can pick a different value. I can pick, tungsten lighting or fluorescent or daylight. But if I like what I see here, I can actually just lock this by hitting this lock at the top right. So now if I take a different shot with different lights, the white balance is not going to change. So next let's talk about focus. We've been doing autofocus up to this point where we can just tap where we want to focus and it goes there, but manual focus is very powerful too. So if we come into focus here and I go to MF, now we're in manual focus. And if I come to the gear here, we want to make sure focus markers are on. And the way this works is, we have the focus here, and I can hit the arrow, like the down arrow, to change the focus, or hit the up arrow to go back, and you get the elephants back in focus here. Now what's cool is I can actually tap on one of these elephants, like the one in the front, and now I have a point of where that elephant's in focus, and I can drag one of these labels, B, to be that elephant. Now if I tap on the one in the back, you can see the point jumped again, and now I can set that to be A. Now what's cool is I can actually jump between A and B now. So if I tap B, it comes up to the front elephant, and if I tap A, it goes to the back elephant. And I can even change the speed of that transition by going here. So the pull focus speed is set to 1 second, but let's say if I make it 0.1 second, which is very fast, now you'll see that the change happens almost immediately, right? Now we're jumping back and forth very quick. And so this is very powerful. I mean, pulling focus like this is not easy, but this makes it a lot more intuitive. I can even drag on the dot here to change focus as well. Alright, well now you know how to use Cinema Pro to get some amazing cinematic shots. Alright, now let's go back to the issue with Filmic Pro. If we go to the Play Store and look at the Filmic apps, and we go to an app like Filmic Remote, I can download it on the Xperia for $2.99. But if I go to Filmic Pro, which is the app that I really want, you'll see that it says it's not compatible with this device. Now this is strange because Filmic actually had an update to Filmic Pro to support the Xperia 1 Mark II. So I reached out to support, and they told me that unfortunately they're having some issues with the audio, recording that with the device, and that they're working with Sony to get that resolved. So hopefully they figure something out, but as far as I know right now, Filmic Pro doesn't work with the Xperia 1 Mark II. And that's unfortunate because this is supposed to be a filmmaker's camera. Well, I hope you found that helpful. Like this video if you haven't already, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Also, I'm on Twitter now, so connect with me at Supreet Mobile. We can have a conversation, and I'll share some stuff in between my videos. I'll see you there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.